This is a replacement digital battery pack for camcorders. Specifically, this replaces the NP-F970, which is typically a Sony camcorder battery. I received this to review for free, but if you wanted to buy it, it would cost you $40. I have not been paid for my review, and my opinions are my own. So in the box, you get the battery pack and a USB-A to C charging cable. So this battery pack will plug into any place, the normal Sony battery pack would plug into, and you can discharge, or if you have an existing charger, you can charge it with that. But it also has extra features. So it has essentially what's a USB power bank built into the top of it. And so you have the empty to full indicator, so from the factory it has 3 out of 4 dots here. And it has a output that's a USB-A port that says 5 volts or 9 volts or 12 volts. So it must have some intelligent charging circuitry in here where it can do a little bit of power negotiation output here. I don't know what standard it is. I don't know if that's IQ or rapid charge or quick charge. I don't know the exact standard there, but it has a USB-A port out here. Now it also on the other side has a USB-C port that's both in and out, and it says power delivery 30 watts. So essentially this is a 30 watt power bank in addition to being a charger. And you can charge it with that USB-C port as well if you have a power delivery charger. So I'm going to be using this guy in some studio lights, and basically you just snap it in place and that makes this light work uncorded. So that's what I'm using this for, but I'm also going to be testing the USB features on this battery pack. Now the one thing I would have liked to see is some of these batteries come with a protective cover that basically cover up these 2 contact points while it's sitting in your bag, just so nothing accidentally puts in there and shorts out. And this particular battery did not come with one of these covers. So I'm sure you can find some to 3D print, or you can buy extra ones if that's an important thing to you. If you're putting this in a foam box or something with no metal around it where it's already separated, you don't really need a cover. Alright, so first up, I have the battery pack plugged into a USB-C power meter, and I'm going to be using this to charge my laptop. So it has negotiated here 20 volts, and it's putting out 1.36 amps. And so it is outputting 27 watts, 26.9, 27.1 watts. So, that's close enough to 30 watts out for me to give it to them. So basically I'm going to say, yes, it's capable of putting out essentially the 30 watt standard on USB-C power delivery. Now, it's obviously, given 27 instead of 30, but close enough. If you need to charge your cell phone, if you have a USB-C power delivery port on your cell phone, this thing will charge your cell phone pretty darn quick. Alright, next up is charging from a USB-C power delivery device here. So here it's negotiated 20 volts, 1.5 amps, and it is charging at 30.68 watts. So on the output side it was doing 27. Input, it is sucking in the full 30 watts on USB-C power delivery. Alright, now let's test the USB-A port. So when I plug this guy into the USB-A port, by default it's outputting 5 volts. So that's standard USB power. I am going to, first of all, use the USB-A to C cable to plug this guy in just to a cell phone. Now my cell phone has a power delivery port, and so I don't know if it's going to be able to negotiate quick charge or IQ or any of the USB-A style quick charges here. Let's see what happens when I plug this guy in. Alright, so it is charging. It's basically just doing 1 amp at 5 volts, which is only 5 watts, so it's not charging rapidly, but it is charging. So I don't have anything that will power negotiate up to the 9 or 12 volt level on a USB-A port, so I really can't test that USB-A port other than to say it easily produces 2 amps. I've seen it produce 3 amps. So it certainly seems to be capable of putting a decent amount of power for a USB-A port out there. So I think pretty much anything you'd plug into that USB-A port is going to be pretty darn happy and charge it close to its full rate. Now the real interesting question is, can it go out of both ports at the same time? So, no, it is preferring the USB-C power delivery port. It puts out 28 watts out there. This USB-A port gets nothing. All right, let's talk about pass-through charging. If you plug this guy into a USB-C charger, it negotiates 5 volts at 1 amp. So it's charging at 5 watts. And the reason for that is that I have this guy plugged into the USB-A port. So I'm not drawing any current right now, but it's plugged in. Now if I turn this on, right now we are at 5 volts at 2.3 amps. And so we're drawing 2 amps. So essentially 2.3, 2.4 amps going in, 2 amps coming out, so it's charging at 0.4 amp and it's passing through power to the USB 5 volt plug. So this is not a good use of your time, because if I were to unplug this USB-A port, this guy here is capable of jumping up to 20 volts. Now I don't know if it will auto detect and auto jump up to 20 volts, or if I'm going to have to unplug it and replug it to make that happen. So right now it's stuck at 5 volts 1 amp. So I'm going to unplug it because it's had enough time to auto detect and figure this out on its own. So you unplug it, you plug it back in. Does the welcome, it's doing its power negotiation, and now it's negotiated 20 volts, and it is ramping the amps up, and we're up to 30 watts. So if you're charging this guy with USB-C, you can get 30 watts, but only if the USB-A port is not plugged into something. If the USB-A port gets plugged in, it auto goes back down to 5 volts. And so the 5 volts are coming in. There's also 5 volts out. If you turn on the load out here, you know, I'm drawing, in this case, about 10 watts. So 4.6 volts, 2 amps. You know, power coming out of here is 9 point some watts. Power going in is only 11 or 12 watts, so we're actually putting more power through it to the output than we are to put into the battery. So I do not recommend passing through power here. Now, if it's overnight, you need to charge a small 5 volt device and you need to charge the battery and you know it's going to be there for 20 hours, this would get it charged eventually, but it would just be a lot faster just to, you know, unplug this guy. And there is a danger here of, if you plug in the USB-C port and then you unplug that guy, this thing stays at 5 volts. Now it's putting in 5 watts right now, but this battery here claims to be 57 watt hours, so that's, you know, 11 hours to charge this guy up. So if you plug this into USB-C, make sure there's nothing else plugged in, and then plug into USB-C. And once you do that, this guy will negotiate the 20 volt charging at basically 30 watts. And so that will charge this guy in 2.5 hours, which is much better than 11. Alright, so just rating this guy as a USB power bank, it's a 7.8 amp power bank. It has a USB-C port, can go in or out at 30 watts. There's a USB-A port, so if you don't have a USB-C cable or you have a device that needs USB-A for some reason, you can go out that way, but you really can't use both ports at the same time. So I'd recommend you definitely favor the USB-C power delivery port, if at all possible. So as a battery bank, it's functional. Now, I'm not using it primarily as a battery bank, I'm using it primarily to, you know, run this light. And so I am going to discharge it fully. So the exact amount of time that it runs this light, this is a 24 watt light, and so if this guy really has 57 watt hours, it should go for 2 hours and a little bit more. I'm not going to time this right now because this wasn't full to begin with. What I'm going to do is discharge it fully. After it's discharged fully, then I'll power it back up fully and see how much power it takes to power back up. And that'll give me a good idea of the actual capacity of the battery inside, not just what the sticker on the bottom says. Okay, I have discharged this battery. We got flashing on empty, and we are going to plug it in to the USB-C power delivery 30 port. Turn on the source power. Okay, we have zeroed out the watt-hour counter. It is negotiated 20 volts, 1.5 amps. It's charging at 30 watts. Okay, this guy has been charging for about an hour. It's got about 35 watt-hours in it. You can see the outline of what looked like 18650 cells in there. It looks like there's 3 18650 cells stacked vertically, probably 2 wide. Can't quite see the ends of them or anything through the plastic case. See on the other side here. Most of the heat is concentrated in that upper part there, which is the charging circuitry, and it feels warm to the touch. It's not uncomfortably hot or dangerously hot, but it's definitely warm to the touch. You know, you can tell this guy's charging, and as I said, most of the heat is concentrated up here on this top part, which is the electronics. Alright, this guy has been all 4 lights lit up for several hours now, but it hasn't dropped to 0 power draw. It's drawing 0.8 watts, so it's, 0.043 amps at 20 volts. I think this is just kind of a maintenance voltage that it's not really charging the battery anymore with, because if we look at how much power's gone in, it has 71 watt hours going in, and this battery claims to be 57 watt hours. So, I think at this point the battery is full and it's just pulling a little bit of power. I don't know where that power is going. It might be dissipating as heat, but that battery sure looks like it should be completely full here. So this guy, given that it was pulling power for several hours after it got fully charged, I can't say for exactly sure, how much power is in the battery, but I think it probably has a 57 to 60 watt hour battery. It took 70 some in, and there's some losses in charging inefficiencies, but essentially I think that the battery capacity is pretty close to what they have on the nameplate here. Now, I can't talk about the longevity of the cells in this battery, but at least out of the box, it provides the power that it says it's going to provide. It has some neat features with, the USB-A output port, the power delivery USB-C in and out port, so it has some nice extra features in addition to being able to run, the Sony compatible accessories or camcorders.